right, welcome back everyone to this last session of the day. I'm not quite sure my mic is on. Is my mic on? Anybody? Yes, cool. I don't have sound in my ear, but that's okay. So we're now here to slow down a little bit, to quiet our minds and to listen to our next speaker, who's currently meditating backstage. I believe he will be with us in a few seconds. Our next speaker is a Tibetan Buddhist monk who is focused on transforming stress and on optimizing mental potential. So first, he will spend about 20 minutes helping us understand the neuroscience underlying meditation, how it affects our brain, what it does to our body chemistry, and how we can incorporate it into our daily lives. And then he'll be joined by Alexander Schlaubitz afterwards for a conversation, and he will be open for questions. But first of all, let's enjoy the next 20 minutes. And please give a round of applause to Gelong Thubten.
So, thank you very much. So, I'm here today to talk about meditation, which, of course, is often called mindfulness these days. And what I want to do is just give you a taste of how meditation can really change our lives, particularly in this sort of modern, busy world. I think there are some basic misconceptions around meditation. One of them is that people think it's very separate from ordinary life. You know, the kind of traditional image of meditation is that you sit on top of a mountain and you're sort of elevated from the normal stresses of one's existence. And so how is that connected to our ordinary life? But that's not true. Meditation is about training our mind, and our mind goes with us everywhere. So there's actually nowhere that you can't train your mind. So it's very much integrated into our daily life. And I work with a lot of companies and organizations where we're bringing mindful presence into the day for everybody. I think another major misunderstanding is that when you meditate, you're clearing your mind. A lot of people think that. So then, of course, they struggle hugely because they sit down to do a meditation session and they're trying to clear the mind, and the more you try to clear the mind, the busier it becomes. So then you feel like a failure. So you're trying to push away the thoughts and go into a kind of empty state. And the more you push, the bigger the thoughts, and then you feel like actually your meditation is making you more stressed. So this is not meditation. This is trying to put yourself into a coma, you know. And we need to question that. We need to ask ourselves, why would we want to go into a blank unconscious state? What would that have to do with our ordinary experience? So meditation is not about clearing the mind, it's about focusing the mind. It's about developing choice, developing flexibility. So a very typical meditation exercise would be to focus on your own breathing, and that puts you into the present moment. And then, of course, when you do this, you find that within a few seconds your plan fails because you're focusing on your breathing, and then suddenly you're skiing in the Alps, or writing an email, or planning your dinner. You know, the mind starts wandering. But this is part of the process, because the mind wanders, and then you manage to just bring it back to the breathing. And then it wanders again, and then you bring it back to the breathing. And this is the training, and you get better and better at it. But of course, the point is you're learning to send your mind where you want it to go. Because generally, I think it's true to say that our mind often goes to places we don't want it to go. You know, when we're stressed, when we're upset, when we're bored, lonely, distracted, these aren't mind states that we plan. Our mind goes there automatically. And some of our reactions are incredibly childish. In a way, we are children trapped in the bodies of adults because our mind hasn't matured with our body. I'll give you an example of that. Say you are stuck in traffic, and then you start getting impatient, frustrated, upset. We intellectually know that that reaction isn't going to make the traffic move quicker. And also, it's not a reaction we plan. We don't sit there thinking, okay, how shall I do this? Let's get stressed. We don't plan our moods. We don't wake up in the morning and think, okay, by 11 o'clock this morning, I'm going to try a bit of anxiety, and then this afternoon, maybe a bit of depression. These things just happen. So our mind is going to places we don't want it to go. So let's go back to what I said about meditation, where you are focusing on the breathing, and then your mind wanders. That's your mind going somewhere you don't want it to go. It's almost as if we've lost control of the car. We're no longer behind the driving wheel. So then you catch yourself that you got distracted. You jump back into the driving seat. You turn the car around and drive it back to the breath. Do you understand what I mean? So you're training in that precision and choice. So then the more you can do that, the more you'll find that you can let go of negative mind states and put yourself into a state of choice. I think it's very important to reflect upon the nature of happiness. What is happiness? Where does it come from? Because for most people, and also what our culture constantly tells us, happiness is the result of our experiences. If this happens, then I will be happy. If that happens, then I will be happy. I need this before I can be happy. This is a very vulnerable way to live. On the other hand, if you meditate, then you're choosing happiness. Happiness becomes the cause of your experiences, not the result of your experiences. So you have choice. You're choosing where to put your mind, and you're choosing to be present. I think one of the main things which it inspires people to want to meditate is they're working with a huge amount of stress. I know that's what got me into meditation in the first place, was immense amounts of stress. And it's very interesting to see how rapidly meditation practice can change our relationship with stress. The stress is not going to go away. Even if you go and lock yourself in a room in a retreat, you'll still have stress. But your mind can change the way it responds to the stress. So it's not the things in our life that cause us stress. It's our thoughts and reactions towards those things. Then there's the possibility of change. So we can learn to not get caught up in a negative, reactive state. Let's go back to the example of sitting in traffic. You don't have to get wound up. You can relax, take a free holiday. Life has given you 5 minutes to rest. Why do we need to check our phone, check the radio? Why not just rest? We're all desperate for more rest, but it's given to us and we don't take it. So you could choose to rest in that time. Standing in a queue, you could choose to relax by being mindful, which means to feel the ground under your feet, to be aware of your shoulders, aware of your breathing. By diverting your attention away from your thoughts and into your senses, you can go into a mindful state. And then you are choosing how you feel. And of course, this works in terms of our body chemistry as well. When we're stressed, our body is producing huge amounts of cortisol. Cortisol is the stress hormone. And this is a very reactive, automatic pattern. It's sort of the fight or flight reaction, where the part of our brain which regulates stress, which is called the amygdala, when we're in danger, it fires off danger signals, and this causes the release of cortisol in our body, which makes us ready for fight or flight, which was a very healthy picture when we were living in ancient times in the wilderness, gathering roots and berries, always in danger from the elements, from predators, from other humans, and that sort of amygdala reaction and the cortisol would get us ready for those dangers, and we would burn off the cortisol through fight or flight. Cortisol is very toxic unless you burn it off. Fast forward to now in the 21st century, we're sitting behind desks and we're still experiencing the same thing because our amygdala doesn't know the difference between being chased by a tiger or being chased by an email. All it knows is I am under pressure, so cortisol is released and we don't burn it off. We're stuck behind our desk with a constant trickle of cortisol in our body. Now, of course, it's been shown through clinical research that if you practice meditation, this is going to help the amygdala to become less overreactive. So that flow of cortisol is going to become less, and then only there when you need it. So it's very exciting, the kind of research that's happening these days around meditation and mindfulness, where they're showing different brain activity, healthier brains. It's almost like taking your brain to the gym. And I think in our culture, we have so much of the gym culture. Take your body to the gym, feed your body the right foods, but not much emphasis on keeping the mind healthy. So if we add meditation to the mix, then we're creating better brain chemistry, which of course affects our body. So I think people are using meditation a lot for dealing with stress, but it goes further than that. It's not just a relaxation tool. It's actually a way to really change our perception of reality, because we're learning to be less controlled by our thoughts and emotions. We're learning to come from a space of awareness where we can observe who we are and what we are, and we can make choices. And of course, another major choice is to learn or to choose to be present. I'm sure you'll agree with me that so often we're absent. And of course, technology, with all of its benefits, has brought a lot of distraction to our life, where we're constantly somewhere else. We're standing in a queue and we're checking our phone. So we're not really there. And we find it difficult to be present. Our mind is sort of automatically distracted. So as well as stress reduction, meditation can enhance mental focus. And we're using this a lot with school children, teaching them meditation so that they can be present and focused during their classes. But of course, it's also useful for us adults. Whether it be in terms of our work, wanting to be focused and present while we're working, or also in our life in general. How many people spend so much money to go on an expensive holiday, and then they lie on a sun lounger checking Facebook to see what's happening at home? Where are they? Where is that person? How much of our life are we present for? We're kind of gulping down our food while looking at the internet at the same time. We're always somewhere else. So if we learn meditation, we can train to bring our mind to where our body is. And this can be a very relaxing experience, but also a very empowering experience. Very empowering because you become in touch with this moment. And then you can choose what to do with this moment. And this is where the meditation now enters the phase of ethics and compassion. So, learning to make ethical choices, choices which both benefit ourselves and others. So a really important part of the meditation journey is to start being less self-obsessed and more aware of the interconnection between ourselves and all living beings. How we depend on others, they depend on us. Everything is like a gigantic web of connections, a bit like the internet. So if we're practicing meditation and we're bringing a compassionate motivation to that, a wish to be more mindful of what we say and what we do and how we affect others, then we create a more harmonious culture. His Holiness the Dalai Lama very famously said, "Inner peace leads to world peace. Inner peace leads to world peace." So what he meant is that if the human individual develops a peaceful and compassionate mind, then this creates connections. It's like throwing a stone in water and then the ripples spread and everything affects everything else. So having a compassionate drive in our meditation practice is really something very crucial, because otherwise the meditation could become very kind of selfish. Just, I want to feel good. I want to feel better. I want well-being. So we're kind of meditating away with a strong ambition to feel something. And the problem with that is the more we try and feel something, the more disappointed we become. Because when there's a sort of quest for feeling good, there's a building of a habit of expectation. And when you build a habit of expectation, it's always jumping ahead, looking for the next thing. So however we feel is never enough. So at the same time as building attachment and expectation for a good experience, we're building disappointment that the experience is not good enough. So introducing compassion into the meditation journey helps to alleviate this pressure of self-obsession. It doesn't mean we become a martyr and kind of throw ourselves on the ground and ask everybody to walk all over us. It simply means that we can put our own problems into perspective and become much more committed to generating a harmonious environment around us and in the world at large. So the last thing I wanted to mention was, we're talking here about training. We're talking about practicing meditation every day, maybe for 10 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever it takes. But also the integration of that into daily life. Because if you practice for 10 or 15 minutes in the morning and then the rest of the day there's no integration, it's kind of wasted. You've got to bring your meditation to work. Don't leave it at home. Otherwise you're like two people. The person at home who's all kind of zen and the person at work who is very distracted and upset and stressed. Bringing your meditation to work means to practice micro moments of meditation throughout the day. And this doesn't mean running off and sitting down and doing something every 20 minutes, because that would be impractical. It's actually about bringing awareness to your moments throughout the day. For example, you're sitting behind your desk in a very busy, noisy office, and you just take a moment to feel the ground under your feet or feel the chair under you. And of course, when you get good at this, you can start doing it while you're active, while you're talking, while you're busy, while you're moving, while you're running. You're dropping into, it's like small drop-ins throughout the day, dropping into a mindful experience many, many times a day. And this means that you're never too far away from your practice. Your meditation is always with you. It's something totally integrated into your working day, no matter how busy the environment is. In fact, when you get good at this, the more busy the environment, the better, because you have more to train with. So the irritating moments of life, such as being stuck in traffic or standing in the queue at the airport or being late for something, these become exciting opportunities for deep relaxation, which is completely the opposite of how we normally react. Normally we go into an automatic stress reaction. But if you learn to be mindful in those busy moments, in a way you're rewiring your own brain. You're creating new neural pathways, an ability to change your reaction into a response. And this is where you're developing a huge amount of power over how your mind functions during the day. But of course, this has to be trained. We've all got to be thinking in terms of a daily approach. very often people come to my classes and then they say, okay, can you give me a special technique I should use when I'm stressed? And then I say, well, it's not that you can just pull it out of your sleeve in emergencies. It's like training. If you train every day, then when you're stressed, your training will kick in. You can't save it up for those dangerous moments. It's a bit like physical training. If you go to the gym every day, you're going to get big muscles, and then you can carry heavier burdens, heavier bags, for example, because of the training. Same with meditation. If you meditate every day, then the challenges that life throws at you, your meditation training will be meeting those challenges. But if it's just once a week or once a month, it's not really going to work. So I think the most important thing is to develop a daily program, which is very easy if you don't bite off more than you can chew. Some of you may be coming to my class tomorrow, and we'll go into this in more detail around how to develop a daily practice where you sit for 5 or 10 minutes in the morning, but then you also have these micro moments throughout the day. So thank you very much for listening. That's my presentation.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Gelong Thubten.
Thank you.
And now we'll be joined here on stage by a guy who is responsible for Lufthansa's marketing. He's vice president of marketing for Lufthansa, but he's also responsible, among other things, for an initiative called Life-Changing Places, which basically accompanies people on journeys of transformation, on journeys of finding meaning in life, in changing their life for purpose of finding that meaning. And we will have a conversation here now. Please keep submitting your questions on Slido. We've had quite a few coming in. And now please give a round of applause to Alexander Schlaubitz.
So Thubten and I met about a little over a year ago, at a conference completely unlike this one, because it wasn't nearly as grand as this one. But we were intrigued by each other's narratives and some of the approaches that we took. And, we came up with the idea of doing a joint session, and, I thought maybe we should talk a little bit about finding meaning. And then the title came out, and I thought, oh my God, it says finding meaning in a sped up world, to which I think Thubten probably can speak quite eloquently, because I think he's found it, whereas I think it should have been called searching meaning or searching for meaning in a sped up world, which would better characterize perhaps where I'm coming from. But I think one of the things that we found so interesting in our conversations leading up to this and some of the other exchanges was, in all of our work, but also in my professional work as I'm trying to build better travel experiences, we find that there are these micro opportunities. You referenced an opportunity when you're stuck in traffic. Well, we have this happen across our travel journey a lot. And one of the cases that we always reference is a phenomenon that we describe as delightful immobilization. And it is the moment at which you sit down in an airplane and you, for the first time, lock yourself with your seatbelt. And initially, of course, that is one of the most disconcerting experiences you could possibly have, because you're realizing that for the next hour or 3, you're going to be incapable of running around, doing the things you want to do, check your email. And we're trying to figure out, can that become one of those little hidden gifts?
That's very beautiful. I mean, to me, that's like retreat. When you go into retreat, you're alone with your mind. So the seatbelt goes on. You cannot use your cell phone, there's no in-flight video, you're alone with your mind. And could that become an opportunity for relaxation, for mindfulness? And in a way, you're using the travel experience to train yourself to be totally present. Because when you get to your destination, you want to be present. So start now.
Well, I think the topic of being present, as we were being introduced, this campaign or initiative that we're calling Life-Changing Places was referenced as well. And the thing that we've tried to do, and it's been kind of like the midpoint of a long journey, I think, at this point in time. We started out with a little platform that was called Inspired By, and it was trying to portray what could happen on a journey if you really immersed yourself in it and really allowed for it to happen. And that was before I knew of the term mindfulness. But I think it was very much about mindfulness. It was about making sure that you know that there is a privilege to traveling. And when we were talking about it, I remember one of the cases that I referenced from my own biography is that, I'm kind of the older statesman in a lot of the companies that I've been, and we had cases where people would come to me and say, "Oh my God, Alex, I have to go on a 2-day trip to San Francisco. It's going to be so stressful." And I said, "No, you don't understand. You're going on a 2-day trip to San Francisco. If this were something that were called out in a radio promotion here in Frankfurt today, thousands of people would line up and say, 'I want to go.' The onus is upon you as a traveler to make something of that. So, get up a half an hour earlier perhaps and go and take pictures or do something to actually be in the moment." So I wonder, how do you do that when you travel? How do you take something out of a journey? What do you do? What do you look for? What are the experiences that happen for you?
Actually, it's my main practice because I'm traveling a lot. Sometimes I'm on a plane 3 or 4 times a week. And so there's 3 queues. There's check-in, there's security, there's the gate. There's all these moments of waiting. And you notice your own mind and body in those moments. How when we're standing in a queue, our mind and body are going into a kind of rushing experience. When am I going to get to the front of the queue? It doesn't make any difference. We'll get there when we get there. But we're so automatically conditioned to rushing forward. On a chemical level, we're basically releasing huge amounts of cortisol. We're aging faster in that moment. So I like to pull that back into a mindful state, which means just to feel where my body is. I'll feel the ground under my feet. I'll drop my shoulders. I'll be aware of the presence of my breathing. And when you divert your attention away from your thoughts and into your body, it puts you into that mindful state. You're achieving many things in that moment. You're being present. You're reducing stress. But the most interesting thing you're doing is you're learning to be happy, because you're learning that this moment that normally torments you is an opportunity. So you're building a habit of seeing life's challenges as opportunities, and this is how you open up the doorways to happiness.
Yeah.
So it's a multi-layered benefit.
What happens at destinations for you when you are in a city like Frankfurt? What differs as far as the overall experience is concerned from perhaps another place to which you travel? What are some of the things that you look for or that impact you?
Very often I'm literally going somewhere, giving a talk and coming back, and so
Like the rest of us.
You don't even see much of the city. But my training is to try to just be present and be positive in all these different moments. And so in many ways, it doesn't matter where you are, and you could be in a very beautiful environment or a less beautiful environment. Can you stay positive? And also, can you have a motivation of, okay, I've landed in Frankfurt. What am I going to give to Frankfurt? Rather than what am I going to take from Frankfurt? What can I give this city?
Yeah. So what are you planning on giving the city this time?
Happiness, love, and compassion.
Yeah. Well done. One of the other things that I referenced this campaign that we started, which is called Life-Changing Places, and it is quite a slightly paternalistic, perhaps, approach, because we think people could actually travel better. And you referenced the point that, if somebody were to go on a 2-week vacation on Mallorca with everything kind of like being pre-set up, and they're sitting down or they're in the lounge and they're still checking Facebook, they've really not accomplished very much of what they came to do. And we came to a point where we tried to figure out what are the kind of things that we could serve people, that we could at least inspire them with, that could perhaps lead to the fact that they're going to travel better. And by better we mean do the kind of things that perhaps are a bit more challenging, because challenges kind of mean that you need to occupy yourself
and you
with
grow.
that. You grow.
You grow.
Yes. And even on a dreary day like this, if you take a 5-minute escape and you try to figure out what would it take for me to go on a trip to Mongolia, where I've never been, it's probably something that's going to enrich you more, even as you're planning for the trip, than if you're just surfing about kind of like, you know, an all-inclusive hotel on Mallorca. And so we've been trying to push the boundaries a little bit of finding ways in which we challenge people to accept that when you do a journey like that, and when things do go wrong on journeys like that, those are actually the kind of things that end up being more enriching. And in the case of life-changing places, we take narratives of real people that have gone somewhere and have discovered something almost in the Nietzschean, they're becoming who they are sense, and they change their lives. What does that trigger for you?
Well, I think it's beautiful, and I watched some of the videos that you made, and I love this notion of the outer journey and the inner journey happening simultaneously. So the person is going somewhere and also learning about who they are. And I think what is needed in that kind of situation is an ability to train in awareness. Because even if you have the intention of, I'm going to go to Mongolia and I'm going to learn something, the mind can be so habituated to distraction, irritation. With meditation training, together with that experience, the person is learning to be present, learning to learn. So I think that the combination would be ideal.
How do we get travelers to learn how to learn?
Is you teach them simple techniques as soon as the plane takes off. As well as the safety demonstration, cabin crew should also be telling them how to meditate. I mean, I loved what you said about the immobilization. You put the seatbelt on. The mind sort of starts to get uncomfortable. What am I going to do with myself? I don't know how to be with myself. That's what the mind is looking for something. So can we help people to make friends with their own mind? Then the journey is a journey of taking your mind by the hand like a friend and walking through that experience together.
So to the shock of my team, I'll make a public kind of like announcement that we will pursue some way of getting people as they come onto a plane or as the plane is about to take off to find mindfulness.
I can help you.
Yes.
What was it that inspired you to start that program?
I think it was largely autobiographical. I think I, like you, ended up traveling so much. And I felt like it would either be something about which I could become resentful, because it felt like such a stress. And, you know, you were in anonymous kind of like environments oftentimes. You know, you get to an airport and they all look kind of the same. You get picked up by a car and, you know, you try to have a little bit of conversation and then you end up in a conference room and at a hotel and then you repeat all of that multiple times a day or a week. And it just didn't feel particularly gratifying. And I felt that there were probably a lot of other people that had similar experiences. Another experience that really shaped me, so before I joined Lufthansa, I was one of the frequent travelers on Lufthansa. And I remember when I got my first senator card, which was, you know, one of the more elite kind of like tiers, I felt like, oh my God, I've arrived. Here it is. You know, here's another.
I'm a senator.
I'm a senator. Oh, beautiful. And then I distinctly remember sitting in the senator lounge on a Sunday evening and thinking, I don't know if the people that have done it right are sitting here with me right now. You know, it's a Sunday evening. There could possibly be more meaningful things to do than to sit in the Senator Lounge. Now, I still invite all of you to spend as much time in Senator Lounge any time of the day on any day. But I just, you know, I realized that this kind of a lifestyle comes at a price. And what are the kind of things that we can do to help people to the point that you were making, finding some joy.
Finding meaning.
Finding meaning in those kind of like journeys. And so my way of doing that, my coping mechanism, I guess, or strategy was I started to take a lot of pictures. And so I made a habit of every morning when I was anywhere I wasn't before, or even if I'd been there before, I get up half an hour or an hour earlier. And I start taking pictures. And it makes me, it's not so much about the final product, it is more about a way of observing things.
It's journaling.
It's journaling things.
Which is a psychological tool.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
For which I had no terminology. But you know, nevertheless, that was my way of doing that. And so we tried to figure out ways that we could perhaps find mechanisms for people that are in like-minded kind of places and start enriching that. And from there, we started to just venture into deeper kind of like attempts or experiments to try to figure out what else can a trip be? What else can it mean? And again, I think a lot of times we're very, very privileged, most of us. We forget that our grandparents didn't used to travel like this. 95% of the world's population don't get to experience the things that we're allowed to experience. And I felt like maybe we should get a little bit more awareness for that and get people a little bit more joyful about the whole trip.
And also, I think one of the main feelings during that kind of travel lifestyle is one of exhaustion and fatigue.
Absolutely.
And people, okay, so it's not natural for the human body to be propelled in a metal tube across the sky. We are tired, but you can learn to be comfortable within the tiredness. And earlier on I was talking about being present. And very often people say, when I talk about being present, they say, yeah, but what if my present moment is a painful one? Don't tell me to be present when I'm in pain. But the idea with mindfulness training is that you're being present and you're accepting that moment. You're relaxing into whatever is happening, be it physical pain, emotional pain, physical exhaustion, so you can be comfortable with the tiredness. I think when we're tired, most of the experience is a feeling of rejection. I want to feel less tired. I don't like feeling tired. I'm pushing against the tiredness. Whereas I'm tired a lot of the time, but I'm learning how to use meditation to relax into the tiredness and just be happy with it. So you can live this kind of lifestyle of constant traveling, and it doesn't need to wear you out if you know what to do with your mind. And
I think that's something to which we're trying to iterate. We're still a long ways away.
Well, through inspiration, you're helping people be inspired, and that will lift them above lift them out of a state of boredom and irritation.
I think we're giving a platform, an opportunity for people who so choose to try to figure out if they can do this in a slightly different way. But again, adding the tools that you can provide is probably going to be a fantastic combination to really kind of empower this kind of a programmatic.
Absolutely.
So we have some questions coming up on screen. Should we start looking at some of those?
Let's do that. Let's do that.
So one of the questions, which I presume goes to you, do you believe meditation apps are positive since they create a dependence on the phone?
Meditation apps? Well, we are already dependent on our phone. So why not get our phone to teach us? It's already something, we're grabbing for that phone all the time. So why not let your phone do something useful for you? And I think that's quite a good thing. And I'm interested in that world. I'm also making a meditation app. And my idea with this is that you can train somebody through an app, but they have to eventually go solo. It's like learning to swim, learning to ride a bicycle. You don't want to be dependent forever, but it's a good teaching tool. Why not use technology? It's there anyway. And our phone usually is quite oppressive. It's ringing all the time. I want to be away from it. Well, make friends with your phone. Get your phone to be your teacher. Why not?
I like that. Tell us your story. How did you get where you are right now? How did you realize we're all one, all connected?
Okay, what about you?
Well, why don't you? So I think, I will try to take a swing at this. I've taken kind of a road with a lot of detours and weird turns that I certainly didn't anticipate. I was born in Venezuela, and I ended up living in Germany and in the US a lot. And I think a lot of what shaped me was never feeling like I was really home. So there was always a little bit of a sense of alienation that permeated my life until I got to the point where I think that I can incorporate a lot of things of the world, of different places, into my life. I can make little rituals that remind me of things. And I do travel a lot, and I think I find a lot of joy in exploring different things and challenging myself. And so I think I've turned somewhat of a weakness or something that I struggled with into something that now propels me to go and be more immersive about things.
That's great. In my case, it was immense amounts of stress. I have been a monk for 24 years now, and I was 21 when I became a monk, and it was a very radical step. I was filled with stress and unhappiness, and I was brought up in a Buddhist family. My parents are both Buddhists, and they very kindly nurtured me in that tradition, although it was never something I practiced, it was just something I believed in. So when I was faced with a huge crisis at 21, I went to a Buddhist monastery, and 3 days later I was a monk. And somehow that's the path that works for me.
Yeah. How did you know that this was the path?
I really believe that sometimes we don't make choices. Life chooses us. And there are some, I'm sure all of you have found times in your life where you do something, a deeper part of yourself has made that happen. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So at that time, I wasn't even particularly interested in religion, and being a monk was so different to the lifestyle I was living before, but it chose me,
Yeah.
and it fitted.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you found the same with your choices, that you felt something was missing, or you felt lost, and now you're feeling there's a connection.
I think, so I never felt like I had a particular talent, and the only thing that I thought I had perhaps going for myself was an incredible amount of curiosity. And so I think I just started to find a way to channel that. And I started out in advertising, and that was kind of like a way to explore the world and iterate and test things. And I think, to anybody that is interested in a career choice in marketing, I don't think that there's ever been a better time to be in marketing if you're a curious human being, because I think there are just so many hypotheses that you can build, so many things that you can iterate. There's so many platforms that will give you immediate kind of like ability to test and learn.
And you're through advertising, you're describing the world.
Yes.
And to describe the world, you have to know the world, and you have to know yourself. So there's a whole process involved in that.
Well, I think, and I did, one of the things I did struggle with was advertising felt very profane. And it felt like something that didn't necessarily match to some of the ambitions perhaps that I have. But what I have discovered is that if advertising and marketing is done right, it can actually add value to people's lives. And that's one of the ambitions that we have, is to try to figure out not just things that are entertaining, but things that are actually valuable, and find narratives that find resonance, and find stories that could be told and could be shared with other people, because they're just interesting stories, and they're just the kind of human interest stories that people might want to talk about, whether they're coming from a commercial entity or not. So we're trying to do both of those things.
And there's nothing wrong with money, it's what you do with it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's about what your intention is around bringing some positive energy to the world.
Yeah.
And it can be done in many ways.
Yeah. How does an increase in control over one's emotions affect the ability to be spontaneous?
So I try to move away from this word control. Sometimes when people think about meditation, they think they're learning to control their emotions. That's quite repressive, isn't it? Sort of, I am going to make sure I don't get angry. I'm controlling my. That's not what we're looking for. Let's rephrase that question. If whoever wrote the question, please don't be offended. I'm going to rewrite your question. How does an increase in choosing our emotions affect the ability to be spontaneous? So if you are meditating a lot, you could have more choice to stay positive and stay inspired, rather than slipping into that discomfort and stress. And when you can choose to put your mind in the present moment, that's spontaneity, because the spontaneity arises from the present moment. If you're somewhere else, the spontaneity can't happen. So learning to not be controlled by our emotions and instead to choose, I think, can increase spontaneity. And of course, in your work, it's all about spontaneity. It's about presence. So I think the designer, the advertiser, the person in marketing, the person creating these products, if they're present mentally and emotionally, creativity comes from there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Creativity doesn't come from a distracted mind.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. What do you think about the current evolution of connecting minds, brains through implanted chips
Wow.
with others?
Is that happening?
Apparently so. People have witnessed it.
I don't know what to say about that. I wouldn't want implanted chip in my brain. I hope this isn't the dystopian future that we're headed for. I think people are looking for shortcuts all the time. So just like people would rather not eat nutritious food, they just want to take a pill. It's the same with maybe finding a chip that can do everything for us. But the more we do that, the more we're going to feel something is always missing. This idea of implanting something in your brain to make you function better is almost denigrating who you are. It's like saying, well, I'm dysfunctional, so I need a chip to function better. So you're taking away your own power and the beauty of who you are. Yeah.
I think well, one of the things that I'm reminded of, and this is not the typical digital conference, but so many of the digital conferences seem to be about optimization and making things more efficient and taking friction out and making things more seamless all the time. And one of the talks that I enjoyed the most over the course of the last 4 years was the CEO of Etsy. And 4 years ago, he was talking about the fact that things have become so simple and so smooth and so seamless that you can go onto like an H&M app and kind of like click on scarf, and it costs $9.99, and in about 2 hours time that scarf is going to get dropped by a drone into your front yard, and there it is. And he talked about the notion of effort and friction as drivers of joy and meaning, and that it is not about kind of like having the most amount of kind of like superfluous or superficial kind of like experiences or even goods. And then he referenced his own platform where if you do want a scarf, you have to think about what length, what color, what texture, and it takes a couple of weeks until that scarf comes. But when it's actually there, it's a lot more meaningful.
Exactly.
And it has its own value. It also creates social currency. You have something to talk about. So I think there's a lot to be said about creating a little bit of a counterculture to this culture of maximization of efficiency and functionality to just experiencing.
In Buddhism, we always talk about the middle way. Not too much this, not too much that. Balance.
Yeah.
I think that's what we need.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree. If you become good at calming down your thoughts, is there still enough room for free-flowing creativity, or is there even more?
Well, I think I kind of addressed that already when I talked about how creativity comes from a total immersion in the present moment. And if you are present, then your inspiration is present for you, and that's where creativity comes from. And I think the next question is definitely for you.
Right. I'll talk to our product people. So no more Wi-Fi on Lufthansa flights would be nice for all airlines. I'm afraid of onboard calling, snapping, etc. Hashtag peace in mind. So I'll pick up on Thubten's point earlier. Just because there's Wi-Fi doesn't mean that it needs to be used for something that isn't perhaps inherently valuable. So we'll start featuring meditation apps as part of our larger offering. But in a more serious vein, we're very we do move back and forth on a lot of these topics, because we do know that there is a lot of stress in that overall journey, and that we do need to be conscious of making sure that we create overall healthy experiences for our travelers. And what are the type of things that actually are conducive to helping that, and what are some of the things that are not? And as the marketing department, we think of ourselves a little bit like the empathy center of the organization. We're trying to better understand all the needs, the contextual needs, even some of the micro needs of our travelers, and make sure that not everything is only geared towards monetization, but that a lot of that is just geared towards increasing what we would call the joy of use of the brand, which is kind of like the experience that somebody has with us. And so these are the type of topics that end up having a lot of grounds for conversation within our company, where we oftentimes will retard some of these innovations to make sure that they actually still fit into the overall experience.
Exactly. I mean, I think, doesn't somebody want to have 2 hours where they can't be contacted?
Yeah.
Just a rest, have a rest.
So
we need Wi-Fi everywhere, we don't.
So phone calling is not something that Lufthansa wants to endorse. So that is one of the things where we've drawn a little bit of a line to say that that is not something that should happen on airplanes.
Then people can do the inner journey.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yes. To both, how does your daily meditation practice look like?
So for me, it depends on my situation. When I was living at the monastery, of course, we were doing many hours of meditation, and also we did retreats where we would do many, many hours during the day. Now I'm living on the road. I'm living a very similar life to you. A lot of traveling, a lot of conferences, giving a lot of training. So I have a daily practice which I will not break, no matter what. It's like if you have a cat, you'll feed the cat every day. Yeah. So you've got to feed your mind every day. So I will always do my session every evening or every morning, however short it will be. But then my real daily practice is to try and bring mindfulness into the different moments while I'm traveling, even while I'm speaking. While I'm giving a presentation, I'll be practicing mindfulness at the same time. I'll be trying to keep myself connected to meditation. Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't have a distinct routine. I think what I've done is I've taken out some things that I knew were really bad. And one of them was, I think there are all the studies that indicate that the most stressful moment in the day oftentimes are like the first 10 minutes after waking up.
Yeah, that's actually when the cortisol spikes.
Yeah. Because that's when you start to try to anticipate all the things that are going to do. You're still kind of like going through the to-do list of the things that you haven't done the day before. You're starting to check your first emails. So I'm trying to make sure that the first 10 minutes of my morning are focused on something positive.
That's meditation.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be a formalized sitting down and doing a kind of practice. It's you doing something with your mind. That is meditation. Yeah. What you're doing is meditation.
Yeah. And then, the other practice, I have 2 boys that I only get to see on weekends, but when at the end of the day, we talk about what was the best part of the day today. We try to spend 5 minutes on, not talking about, all the other stuff that happened, but just some of the beautiful things, perhaps, that happened. Otherwise, I struggle with it. I had, mild attention deficit disorder, diagnosed, and so I'm very, prone to running around a lot. I need to find ways to force myself to ground myself in the moment and to stay, as you said, present.
And I think what you're describing is gratitude and appreciation. Yeah. You're spending the morning in a state of appreciation. You're with the kids in the evening discussing what you felt grateful for that day. And more important than meditation is actually gratitude, because we live in a culture that is kind of anti-gratitude, telling us we don't have enough, telling us to be angry all the time. We've got to be balancing that with an active training in gratitude and appreciation. Yeah. I think our time is up.
I think our time is almost up, yeah.
That's a good point to end.
It is, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much to Gelong Thubten, and thank you, Alexander Schlaubitz.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you to you as well for the second day, for being with us here, for filling this room so many times today. Please, if you want to come back tomorrow, which I hope you do, please keep the headphones. You don't have to give them back. You will tomorrow, but you have one more night with these headphones. Also, please enjoy the Me Gate downstairs. There are drinks and foods, food trucks, many foods. The Festhalle, this venue, closes at 7 p.m. though, so make sure that you're out by 7. The Me Gate is open until 8. We have a fantastic artistic lineup tonight. Please check out the app. For those Germans who know the beginners, die Beginner, they're up tonight. For those non-Germans who do not know them yet, you might want to check them out. There are lots of other things in the app, so please make sure you're aware of the schedule for tonight. The work is done. Now it's play here at Me Convention, and I hope to see you back tomorrow. The first session starts here on Forum Stage number 1 at 10 a.m. Simone D. Sanders will be having a conversation with me. She's the former press secretary of Bernie Sanders. No relation there, but she was representing him on a national stage while he was running for US president. So it's going to be very exciting. Please be back here by tomorrow at 10. Have a wonderful night. Thank you.